Welcome to everyone from the members of the Eastern Canada Division of the Northeastern Region NMRA. My name is James Watley, and I'm joined by fellow ECD member Greg Williams. We're also joined by our guest presenter George Dutka, whose talk today is on refurbishing structures. I'll now introduce George. George Dutka is a retired Canadian National Engineman with 33 years of service. George has been modeling for over 40 years and is well known to many of you as a regular contributor to Railroad Model Craftsman and CARM's Canadian. His beautifully executed White River Division layout, featured in the September 2016 RMC, will no doubt be familiar to you. George has had a modeling book published through RMC White River called Model Railroading with George Dutka. He also has a blog, which he updates regularly, called the White River Division, covering many prototype and modeling subjects of interest. We're very glad that George has kindly agreed to share his knowledge and experience with us. So please take it away, George.
Hello. This is the first slide is refurbishing structures, and this is a little back alley diorama I built using bits and pieces of DPM kits and a few other things. As we go along, you'll see a few of the structures in more detail. Okay. First, I just want to show you what I use as a base coat. Usually when I buy a model at the train show or flea market, it needs a coat of something to a base coat. So I use auto primer, I use black or white spray bombs, or Home Hardware has a nice collection of colors that work well as your base coat to use for painting or putting powders on. I like coloring a lot of my structures or weathering after I've got that base coat on using pan pastels or Bragdon powders. These are some of the Bragdon powders that I use on a regular basis, and they come in little 4-packs, which are quite nice. And this is probably my favorite shade to use. It's raw umber shade. It's a pan pastel, and you can see I'm applying it onto a roof. It just gives you that nice little final appearance. Other pan pastels that I normally use are seen here. They're on the far right. That's your raw umber shade, and on the far left, it's a color that almost matches boxcar red. So I use that on rolling stock, but I also use it on like barns or any buildings, even to highlight bricks. If I put a red coat on, I like putting that over top of bricks. And I have 3 gray tones I use. You really don't need all these colors that I show you, but I've bought them over the year. I just keep adding to it. The light gray here in the middle, it's a neutral gray. It's maybe one of my favorites to use. And these are my final options that I use. There's white, and there's a green that they have that's almost the color of the old Flocal depot green that we used to use. And they have a blender, which is on the right here, which kind of fades colors down. So if you paint a color, whether it's on by brush and acrylic paint or a spray bomb, just by applying that, it gives you a faded look to that color, which is kind of a nice thing to have. So once again, just showing this is a covered bridge in old scale. I'm just using some pan pastels in the rust tones. They have 2 or 3 different ones just to overcoat the roofing. So this structure here, that's a Walther's interlock tower. I bought it assembled, and it's not been painted. It's everything's molded into the plastic. The orange is the gray, and the brick color of that. So just by using these three tones of pan pastels, I've brought it to look as a finished model. Now, before I put any of these on, I normally put a flat finish on anything unless it's been primed. Like if I use a primer, then I'm okay to go with any kind of pan pastels or whatever powders I'm using. But if it's out of the box and it's shiny plastic, you have to put a flat coat on. So testers or whatever your favorite one is, that's you put that on first. This is one of the structures that I had in my book. It's an AHM, just a little country station, and it actually is not a bad looking little building. And so I started off by just spray bombing it, and then just coloring it using chalks. I use the chalks on the window, and it kind of gives you that weathered look. And on the walls, I just use the pan pastels in the red tone, and that kind of gives you a nice look to it. I did spray bomb it red in the start, so that kind of shows you when you add all your details how it looks. The roof was spray bomb black, and then the gray pad pastels are added on there. I picked a GT sign from New England to add on the station, which kind of sets the location. But I mean, that station's typical to almost every railroad. They had something that looked like that somewhere along the line. So there's it sitting on my layout in the White River Division. It just, I have spots where I can drop structures in and take them out. Now, this model I bought, I think it was $2 or $3. I usually look for ones that are assembled fairly good, or if it's one that's not assembled good that falls apart easy that I can pull apart, hasn't been glued together to begin modeling with. So I did two of these all together, and I've still got two more to do. So I'll see what I come up with those. An afterthought, I decided, since most of the New England stations they had slate roofs, and this one actually shows it as slate. I used two acrylic paints that I mixed together, and I just highlighted a few of the shingles. And by doing that it just gives you a little more interest to the roof because it's a big area. And then all I did, I painted it right over top of my pan pastels. The pan pastels were already on when I decided to do this, and then I just drew some of the powders over top so it blends in. So in this photo here, you can see it just being painted on, and there I just pulled my brush down, didn't add any new pan pastels, just to tone it down a bit, and kind of gives you a nice effect. And I do that on quite a few of my structures. So there's the finished roof. So even when your model's done, you always come up with little things that you learn as you go along, and you go back to it and add to what you've already done. Now this was the other one. This is actually the first one I did. So it was just done with a primer, home hardware primer green, and just added some pan pastels to it to get the coloring in. Another structure here that I got probably for $1, might have been one that was given to me. That's an Atlas water tank, and it looked pretty rough. The coloring on it was terrible, and it's not glued together well, if at all, on some parts. But that's the way you like finding them. You find these little structures for $1, and you play around with it, and if you mess it up, it's not a big deal. But usually they turn out pretty good. This was probably one of my first ones that I did, that I assembled and painted. So when I got it all glued together and looking the way I wanted, I spray painted it flat black, and then the colors are built up from the black up, and that's really a good way to do it. Like if you look at what a lot of theaters and stuff like that, when they do their displays, their backdrops and all that, everything's painted black first, and then the coloring is added to whatever they're doing, only just so you don't see through it and you don't see any white or the original material through it. So having a black base to it, if something gets missed, it doesn't show. Um, so the finished model, it's a drop in that I use on my layout. So if I change there, it gets a section house there, or anything else that fits in that same little square. I use Gator foam. It's a resin core foam board that it doesn't water doesn't affect it. You can paint it, and it doesn't bend or anything else. It's really rigid and very light. So that's kind of a good thing for putting your little models on. So that's an overview of looking down. You can see the roof was done blacks and grays. The walls are all just my brown pan pastels, and then I went back with some blacks on the and browns on the supports. And there's a look down. I added a piece of chain on there onto the spout. Actually, I did paint these, so they were painted acrylic gray, and then I put some pan pastel grays on it. So that's probably one of the things that I did a little different than just all pan pastels on there. But I think it turned out pretty good. So this is another find here at a local train show. Usually I look at a lot of the structures. It's not a great looking thing. It was only a few dollars, and you look at the signs, are not glued on right, and the windows are falling out, and it's not great, but it's kind of, I like these block buildings, and that could make a nice little creamery. I've got a lot of spots where building flats can work, and that was one of them. So that shows you what I did. It was just sprayed a gray tone, primer gray, and the windows are. I popped them all out, and I spray bombed them with green, which was home hardware color. And I took the one window. This was a window in there, and I put a doorway in there, and just used a piece of strip wood to make a bit of a dock there. And, it looks pretty good. So that's one of my creameries. A little further, there's the same building again. That was again another little window, so that's become another loading door. You can see the seam on there. I filled that even though it shows a little bit, I filled that with canopy cement or glue, and I just put it on my finger and run it down to fill in these seams, because that was actually quite a gap. And I have to do that quite a few of my buildings that I buy. Sometimes people don't spend time to sand it, file it to fit together, and sometimes it's not worth pulling them apart. It's better just to fill it in, and nobody really notices. I think these are Paula, Pola, corn cribs. So it was a structure I think I got it for free, actually. A friend of mine gave me it at one of the show. We had a bunch of little structures, and they look pretty ugly when they're in the red. And you do see them on people's layouts looking like that. But I started by painting it, and just again use a primer paint, and then build up your tones. So there, it's got dry brush white on as the last bit. You can see some of the pan pastels, and I use some of the Bragdon powders to highlight the roof. And that's my go-to, the raw umber shade that I use on most structures. So that's been applied on there. So, and you can see it finished. That's just set on a little diorama. That's actually another drop-in little scene that I use, that I can actually just set a structure on if I like. But looks a lot better than what you saw in the first view, and it doesn't take much time at all. These little things are they can be fun to do. You can do it in less than an hour and come up with an interesting little model. This was in the February of this year, RMC. So I got gifted a Walther's covered bridge, and it was nicely done. It hadn't been painted. It was just out of the box assembled, and a friend of mine gave it to me. I said, I kind of like the looks of that. I'll have to look for one. And next time I saw him, he gave it to me. So I pulled it apart. It wasn't really glued together. It's made kind of click together. So it was easy to pull apart. I started with the beauty tone again, base coat. So all the what was wood and roofing is all done with that. And this was just brush painted acrylics. Anita's a dark rust. And after I had it done the way I wanted, I went over it all with India ink and alcohol, which kind of gives it that little bit of a weathered look. There's some staining and other stuff. I didn't worry about covering too much of the white trim that you can see, that bright white trim, because I was going to highlight it again with some chalks. Yeah, it shows, that's the base coat. And then I went over top it with powders. And you can see I did the roof the same as I did in the station. I highlighted some of the shingles with some gray and then pulled some powders down. So it gives a bit of interest to the roof. So there's your finished model, but it shows you it's all apart. And, I've added some chalk to it at this point already. I just use some white or gray, whatever you have. And it doesn't have to be, a bright color. You kind of want it to look old and weathered. So you just kind of overcoat it a bit. And, you come up with a pretty nice little model and a lot different than what it originally started out at. Yeah, and there you can see it on the little pond that I built and the roadway and that. It's a small diorama that I'm going to use it at shows. I put some narrow gauge track out in front of it, and I'll be able to display some of my HON30 main 2-foot rolling stock with it. Or you can put a vehicle, coming in and out. So kind of a nice little thing. And I made it so that it drops into the scene too. So I can lift that out, and if I find a spot going forward, then I can put it on my layout. It'll find a home on the layout. But for now, it's set in a diorama. This was in the NMRA magazine a number of years ago. I did a little article on refurbishing structures. So this is another one that's kind of an eyesore thing with somebody's made a thick sign on there. DPM kit, the paint on the windows and doors and trim wasn't all that great, but good enough. But I decided to just go back and I primered the whole thing, gray primer, and then you can see in the back these are what you get at Dollarama. They're dollar paints. I think they're probably $1.50 now, but they're quite cheap and work quite well. So I've got black, brown, and a rusty red kind of color that I use. So I just paint that right over top where wherever I feel that I want to give it some color by paint. I guess I got some of the other grays and blacks over here that I normally use too. They're all from the dollar store, and this is what I came up with in the end. So I used the red, brush painted it on, and blacks on the roof. I did put some seams on there, drew some seams in, and a little bit of tar. Added some interest to the roof, but just throwing some boards, some wire, and pigeon. You can get Pigeon's Best, BEST, from in New England. They sell cast metal pigeons at a pretty good price. So I always try to pick up a pack or two when I see them, and they're useful. I keep all my signs, so when I build structures, I photocopy my signs and I keep them in a booklet. And when I'm doing these structures, I just go through it all and see if I can find something I need, because it adds a lot to your structures or the signages. The doorway was a solid door before, but I opened it up, so a little more interest, because you can see now a bit inside and you can add some details in there. There's some pan pastels drawn down on the rust. The doors and windows, they're all just done with chalks, green chalks. I just dusted it in there. And this is the other side of the building. So both ends have different signs on there. This is a radiator repair I left the door totally closed on this, and just a bit of detail here and there, and really makes a difference. Um, yeah, that's about all I can say about that one. So here's a couple other little ones that that sometimes when you buy a box of structures, some of the clubs are getting rid of stuff, and they'll have a whole bunch of stuff in it for like $10 or $5 or something like that, and you get like 15 or 20 part buildings or walls or whatever. So these are two that were in them. Um, it just gives you something to play with. So either this one I didn't even paint over the walls just by going over with the pan pastels and the brown shade, just toned it down. So you can use that as your base coat and cover right over it. But same with the roof. So I didn't spend a lot of time on that. It's just basically just coating it over with pan pastels. Now this one I think I sprayed it silver first. There's a paint that you can get at Princess Auto, and it's a metal paint that auto places use for when they're doing customizing on the cars, and they want everything to look kind of a dark silver color, and they just spray it on, but it works well on buildings. And then those are the colors I use to come up with that little building. It kind of shows you now I've got the signs and everything on. Just by adding those signs to the buildings makes a big difference. You can use some boards, just lean some of your strip wood that you have left over, and I keep all my little parts in little bins, near where I'm working. So whenever I need it, I just grab it. There's even some little pieces of cut-offs off ties and stuff like that you can use. So, yeah. Now, everybody's probably seen these or have these, they come in green and whatever. They're little electrical boxes, and they're kind of a neat thing to put on your layout in certain spots. So I got 4 or 5 of these. I think they were just included in something. I already had one. So I started by painting them silver, spray bomb it silver, and just go at it with pan pastels of powders. I usually take the lighter tones and go over the silver just to make it look like it's weathered down a bit. The patina is got changed a bit. So there's 4 I did. So that's a brighter silver, and these are some darker silver. So I was just playing around, just see what I can come up with. Now, a lot of these boxes, the railroads are good at keeping them fairly clean or replacing them, but I'm just modeling something that's more old and weathered, and it. Okay, go to the next one. And there you can see one of them on the layout. That's just been set in there, but they look pretty good with a bit of weathering on it. You can go heavy or light, but they all look good no matter what you do with them. That's another one, but they're all fairly close to the same tones. And there's the back side of one. But by adding, after I was done, I just highlighted that with just little bits of the pan pastel neutral gray, which is their lighter gray. And it just kind of gives you that almost like the paint starting to disappear on it a bit. So, yeah. And this is at one of the regional NMRA meets in Syracuse. So this is trackside. This is what one of the relay boxes they have looks like. So obviously that one hasn't been maintained in a long time, and it's actually gone to a dark rust color. So, and it's had some probably graffiti on it that they've just kind of covered over in that. But you can go any way you want as far as toning these down. You can have it painted a bright silver, or you can go with a dark rust or something in between. I use a lot of chalk on structures, and I also use little micro brushes, and it's good for doing windows and doors and stuff like that. So this is an N scale structure that I just did all the windows because they're just too hard to get a brush in on, and you don't want it all over the sides. But it works really well. And you can do that in the HO scale too. Sometimes there's spots that you want to get into that works better with a micro brush. And again, this is another Walther's structure I purchased secondhand. It needed a bit of cleaning up and painting. So it shows you some of the tones here that I've used on it. The wash for wood is on the doors, and the two tones of gray and white are used on the walls. Let's see. So once again, the doors I like leaving open so you can see some of the stuff inside, some newspapers and things like that. Pigeons again on the roof. Now for doing the roof on here, I what you see down on the sides here, that's AK rust streaks. And you can also use rust texture by Vallejo, which I find is a really nice product if you want to have a dark rust. So between the two of them, I've applied them here and there. So even, along these strips. And then what I do is I take those little micro brushes and pan pastel, either dark or the medium rust, put it on top of those spots, on any of these spots, and just drag it down. So it just gives it a bit of a rust streak to it. So you can get pretty creative with some of the rust streaks. So you can see how the roof looks. It adds a lot to it. Signages. This actually was a whole sign, all this stuff together that I took a picture of. It was on the side of a tobacco kiln when you come off the highway near where I live. And you always see that all the time. And I thought, I'll take a picture. And then I had made a bunch of photocopies of it and just cut them out and add them on structures whenever I needed as a group. So that kind of gives it a more modern era look to it. And once again, you can see the doors are open. Actually, I didn't have all the doors, so some of them aren't even there. It just opened up and with some stuff there. I usually try to put a few newspapers hanging out or on the ground, not just leftover strip wood that I had from other projects. So just everything gets used up. This is an O scale structure. So this is cast plaster, and it's got like a sandpaper roof on it. I purchased that at one of the train shows, and that's the way it looked when I got it. Not that great looking, but I thought, no, I can do something with it. I thought I'd in the windows here put some wood to frame it out and a sill and everything else, and see what I come up with. And this is how it looks when I finally got it done. So you can see the window; it's all been framed in. I put a chimney on it, and I didn't add any paint on it. So what you see is all just powders that have been built up. So pan pastels and Bragdon powder. So the green is I just toned it down using the green pan pastels, and on the wall I just kept adding layers of different colors of pan pastels. And I think I got a little heavy on it because when I was looking at it, I thought, no, that doesn't look that great. And I've got all the stuff on there now. Now what am I going to do? And so I took my Indie ink and alcohol and I just put a coat on everything, and it washed some of it away and then pulled it all into the little cracks of the plaster and that, and it gave me quite a nice effect. I did add some signs to it also, and I sometimes on some of these structures I'll add a little bit of greenery along the bottom, so that's like woodland scenery, ground foam, and some little tufts of whatever I have on hand. So I was kind of happy how that all turned out in the end. So colors. So one of my favorite colors for doing wood used to be putting a coat of grime down and for bare wood, but obviously we can't get grime. You can see that it actually changed in tones. Everybody always thinks the colors stay the same, but they change. So I was looking for something that kind of matched in there. So this neutral gray works well. as a color for doing your wood. So I usually start with hunter line creosote black, and then I put this neutral gray over top. So with those two products, it gives you that weathered wood look. That's also in my books, the different options. So these little platforms are for on a feed bell. This one here had the grime on it, and the one in the foreground is actually coated with cement. So that's a hunter line cement, which worked also well. And then I use some AK. This is a wash for wood. So what I do is I use their thinner. So I touch a bit of the thinner and then a touch of the paint, and then it just gets drawn into the cracks, and it kind of highlights, how it all looks. It's you don't want to coat the whole thing in it. You just want that kind of on the edges of the wood and in the grooves. So um, one thing I like using also are AK pencils. I don't know if you guys have been much with pencils. So this is an ON30 uh, covered railway bridge. So on this side here, it's done already. So I've used these two pan pastels, and then I highlighted some of the boards. You can see the streaks here with a pencil. And it doesn't matter if it hits right on the groove or whatever. You just kind of run it down, wherever. This side hasn't been done yet, so it just kind of shows you the little subtle differences. You don't need to put a lot on. You just a little bit to make it look a little more interesting than what it is. There's a little bit more of a close up. You can see that part hasn't been done. This part has the pan pastels on and the AK pencils, and you can see all the little spots that I just kind of drag down there. So all your structures don't have to be B structures. You can use rolling stock as structures that you have along the side of your track. So this is storage done with an old box car. I use the wheels and the couplers on other projects, and I decided to take some metal roofing. That's metal roofing off another box car, cut it to make it as a ramp. I always like putting broken wood, strip wood on the roof for as their running boards, and those are just matchsticks that are made as supports. So you can come up with kind of a line side. This is a little salvage place, but you can have it for your favorite railroad structure. So this is another project I was working on. I got it. It was assembled. It was all kind of a gray color. What you see here, that's what the color was. I just repainted the roof a bit of a silvery color by sponging on some silver to for an underneath base coat before I started with some of the powders and acrylics. So you can sponge on that and just leave it as is. It looked good, but you can take it further. So as you can see, here I've added that's the rust texture that a Vallejo product, and over top of it I put some AK rust streaks down, and then the last bit was which gives you this final look is just by using Bragdon powders, and you just dab it on and pull it down either with your brush or with one of the little micro brushes, and you can see a bit of the silver, that's been sponged on underneath, and it kind of gives you a pretty good look to the roof. Just that alone, if you left the structure as is, it looked pretty good. I went a bit further. These are some of the other colors I use too. You get these at any craft store, and they usually come as a set, and they're pretty good. So if you don't have it'll cost you like $20 to get the Vallejo rust texture and the AK rust streaks, but you can buy one of these sets and get all these colors for way less than what you pay for it. And the burnt umber, it gives you the darker tone, and the burnt cyan, that gives you the lighter tone, and it's all water soluble, so you can damp dampen your little brush and just take it off the lid and do what I was doing with the other tones. So once I was done, I started with pan pastels to see if I could change the color of the structure. I wanted to get it looking more red. Well, that's probably two coats of it, and it really didn't do much to it. Wasn't too pleased with it, so I thought, well, I'll go with acrylics. Put a wash of acrylic over top, right over the pan pastels and everything, and see if I can get a more of a red tone to it. Yeah, that's Rust Red by Anitas. It's not made anymore, but any of the rust colors are dark reds, or browns will work. So this is what happened after I put the wash on, and then just a bit of more of the pan pastels over top. So I kind of got a neat looking red to it, and you can see some of the areas I went lighter. It's with the wash just showing as the wood is showing through from underneath. Some signages are added to it. As you can see there, I just went through my booklet of signs that I had. The door is model open. That's actually a straw. I didn't have a spout for what I needed, so I just kind of cut a straw and on an angle and added it in there, and I've got my filler. But yeah, you can see that, you still see a bit of the coloring showing through, but it's got a nice red to it, and looks like something you'd see along the line that's maybe not even used anymore these days, but it turned out pretty good for a cheap little project. And I imagine all of you have got one of these. These are the little Walthers uh, brick buildings that come with their fueling kit and some other structures that they seem to throw them in. You can see the seams on it. It's not glued together all that great, but it had too much glue to, if I pulled it apart, I'd damage it. So once again, I just add some canopy cement in along the grooves there, and then just touch it up with a bit of my powders, red powders, and you can see what this roof, I just left it as is. It looks like as a metal roof, and just by dragging some powders and the rust tones and that it changes it a bit. I did repaint the decking with underlying cement, just or concrete to give it more of a woody look than what it actually did have in the start. And then you add your details, and the little structure comes alive. So there it is with all the little details added. Now I did paint this gray on the bottom just to show the concrete, but otherwise everything was left as is. It's just powders and pan pastels over top. And this is a second one I did. There was two in the kit, so I on these side walls I added some mortar mix, which kind of brings out the brick a little bit more. But yeah, you can do a lot with these little structures as long as they're glued together half decent. You can fill any of the grooves they have. And there's Robert's brick mortar mix that I use on a lot of my structures to get the mortar lines in. You have to watch when you apply this. So this is done. I do one wall at a time. So I put it on, and it says to leave it for a few minutes and then wipe it off with a cloth or paper towel or whatever. But if you leave it too long, it's too hard to take off. So you actually want to be taking it off sooner than later. So it's a not bad stuff. And the other thing I found with it is it dries out on you over time. So I opened the jar, and I should have bought the smaller size jars. It wasn't hard yet, but it was kind of a jelly, so obviously it wasn't any good to use. So I added some water into it, just a bit to loosen it up, and stirred it around with a screwdriver, and then put the lid on and come back to it the next day, and it was back to its original look. So, and I've had to do that a couple times to it, but it seems like just adding a little bit of water to it, it gets back to its original texture. So here's two more little structures that they're AHMs, they're add-ons onto some of their buildings, and usually you find these for a couple bucks. You can see what this one looks like. This is one that I had already finished, but you can see this wall was cracked. It had a big crack down the side, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it because you're not going to be able to glue it together. So I used a Coca-Cola sign, and I covered the whole works with a Coca-Cola sign, and on the roof I just put a lot of little details on it to highlight a little more interest to it. And that's a piece of the gator form base too. You can see here it's kind of it's got like a foam core, and it's got pulled in. It's only because I didn't realize when I was doing the base, I was using my Flocal colors on it, and it attacks it. So you can use water-based stuff, but nothing with what you get in acrylics or what you get in Flocals. This is another one over here on the right side that I did as a little diorama. Same building again. This is actually in my book. I just made it into a little garage and added a lot of stacks of tires and stuff to it to add some interest. And I added a little lean-to on it. One thing I realized, I still got one more of these, is I don't like the roofs. It's too thick. So I would replace that with a piece of styrene and put some tar paper over top and go that route. Another little structures that I had, I gave them a coat of camo coat. One had a European style roof on it, which I pulled off, and I just made a new one out of styrene. Camel coat is kind of a really nice paint to use. I think that one's khaki. So that's one of the newer ones out that they have, which kind of works pretty good. And after that, all the painting and coloring was all done with pan pastel. So this is kind of a yellowy color, which was used on the wall, the greens on the door, and the roof is still to be done. And on this one, the door was done with the brown. So you don't have to really get acrylic paints out. The powders work just as good for painting if you have any or chalk. So there's kind of the final version on this. I dry brushed some white on the roof. The window was missing out of it. The frame was still there, so I just boarded it up. A bit of a window ledge was on there, so I just added some stuff, extra little parts. I even put some pop bottles on, which were 3D printed. So there's the two of them. This is the one that had the European style of the roof, so I just put some tar paper on it, and there was some green shrubbery on the side that I just couldn't get it to come off. So, you just leave it on, and you just put some more ground foam over top of it, when you're done painting at the final process. So you just go with what you got. This is another little structure that probably all of you have seen at one time or another, maybe had it on your layout. A friend of mine gifted it to me. He says, "Here, see what you can do with it." So and I played around with some of the pan pastels and chalks I had. So the windows and that I was doing up. So I'm using a small brush and making them red, and raw umber shade is my wall color. I even saved the little base on it to add some greenery to it. So you can see the window's been done up, and added a bit of red there, and ground foam, and a bunch of stuff. So here's something that a lot of guys, they just throw these out if they don't like the looks of it, but you can actually turn it into a neat little model. So here's the back side of it. The more stuff you add, little signs and wood, and that's a Tichy oil drum lid. But I save all the stuff and find a spot to use it. This is Walther's. I don't know if I even bought this or somebody gave it to me, but it's an N scale building, and I thought, it looks like the window sizes and that were kind of more like an HO size window, and I thought, well, maybe I can make that into an HO tiny little structure. So that's what I did. I pulled it all apart. I found I had a laser cut door, and I was just going to put it over top, and add some extra details that are HO and see what happens. So there it is. It's I just primered it red, and I just glued the door right over top of the opening where the other door was, and started painting it with uh, pan pastels and Bragdon powders to come up with what you see there. Put a ladder to go up the side of the roof, some little details on the roof afterwards, and some extra HO scale vents and stuff like that. Some signs that I had from somewhere, some new greenery on there. A little bit of an awning over the back door. So the back door obviously would have been an N scale door, and I just put another HO one, and it almost looks like it's an HO scale structure, not an N scale one that's been converted. But I think it turned out not bad. So there it is. Added a meter up the side. But it's amazing what you can do with stuff in other scales. I've taken O scale stuff and turned it into HO stuff, and you can do the same with N scale. So there's looking at the back. This had some greenery on there, and it just didn't want to all come off, so I just kind of left it and built up on it. So once again, this is a nice house. It's at N scale, but I wanted it for my HO scale layout. The HO scale one is way too big for what I wanted to use it for. So what I did was I built it up a little higher by adding some wood trim on the bottom. And I think there was something else there I added, and then styrene corner trim. It was missing some of the roofings on there, so little pieces of styrene were added. And once I got it all together, it was spray bombed and then just weathered. So there it is in my scene. It's a drop-in scene with a little milk platform across the way, and it looks like a nice house that would have been next to a creamery or standalone on its own. And it's not that big, massive building, but it's something that you can fit in your layout quite easily. This is the HO scale one, but they're huge. Same one, the Walthers. So I've cut it down. It was pretty bad shape. There was a lot of breakage to it. The roof was pretty much shot, and I just cut it all down to what I could use on it to make it smaller. I used that's actually some of the wall trim to be the cupola part, and some of the doors I was able to pop off and use. That was the ladder off the one side that was used. So you can see I've got it built up there. I just made a heavy cardstock roof, and that's all made out of just extra pieces, wall pieces. And I painted it white with some white paint, and then just went over it with chalks and powders to get what I wanted tone wise. And there's the final. No, for my roofing, like I do a lot of tar paper roof, and I used to buy the tar paper strips that were the sticky sides, and you glue them on and that, but I found it too thick. Excuse me. So I've been using construction paper. I buy it at Walmart. You can buy a big book for like $3 or $4. And what I do is I spray bomb it lightly with gray primer or whatever color. Like there's greens and reds that were used as roll paper. And what I do is I cut them into 3-foot widths, and I roughly sand it with 220 sandpaper just to take some of the finishing off it, and I glue it on, and on the seams I just go over it. That's dark rust, just with a very, very small brush, just to add a little texture to it, and it works pretty good. So there's the ice house, and I built this diorama for a friend of mine. It's going on his layout. So it's a creamery. That's one of the Walters feed mills, and I've added, that's DPM, some extra walls, and that's just a kit. I can't think of who made it. It's a milk car kit, anyhow. That's Imagine That laser art on the top, little water tower. And it's just a mix smash of stuff, but there's that structure. Now, if I'd have left it the full size, it would have been the whole size of this whole diorama. That's how big those ice houses were. So I've cut a lot out of it. And yeah, there's how the scene was starting to go together. And there's a closer look of, so that was just leftover pieces of DPM siding that I glued together and added some trim on the top. Uh, I added a hatch door going downstairs where the coal would have gone for the boiler. Uh, and I built a platform for the milk cans. Those are Tichy milk cans. And I always like leaving the doors open. So there's some, some interest inside. Window blinds, I just use whatever I have. It could be a brown paper bag or some green um, uh, construction paper or whatever. It all works good. And another angle of the same scene loading platform. So you go through a lot of milk cans when you do something like that. So you're best to get the Tichy. They come in groups of 50. And also I put a spigot out here for if it's bulk loading. And on the buildings, I like adding little things like this is just a little piece of styrene on there, and I've cut little pieces of paper, so that'd be their all their packaging stuff that they need to go for loads. And this is looking at the other side of the building. And you can see like there was something on here, but that didn't come with the kit when I got it. So I just left it as is. I didn't try to change anything. I just painted it the same as everything else. There you see some of the tar paper again added on the roofing there. One of the great little things you can get are these little brushes that are disposable, and you can actually pull them in and out like that. That's got the brush goes probably back to about here, and you can pull it out if you want a big piece of brush, or if you want to do it really fine, you just shove it in. And they're disposable, so you use them a handful of times, and then you throw them out. So once again, you can see I'm doing some rusting on the roof. That's the rust texture, and then I'll add a bit of the AK rust streaks, and then drag some of the powders down. And you can see there I'm using dark rust. That's an AK pigment that comes in their 3-pack for finishing rolling stock. So that kind of, and that corrugated siding is not it's made out of paper, so it's easy to paint and color. And there's with my brush, I'm pulling a bit of dark steel down also, which is in the same 3-pack of powders. And that's how it looks finished. So that's your little bit of rust effect you can do on a structure. So this is back in the very first the opening slide. I was building a back alley scene. So I had a bunch of little buildings that I built up out of just leftover bits and pieces. So there's a bit of a block wall, and just painted it gray, and then just went on with different powders, pan pastels. And I added a sign. That sign come off. I took a picture of it by the Brantford station. It's in the back of it. So and there's another piece of that corrugated roofing just made as an awning. Those are imagine that laser art, one of their stacks. Yeah, that's just how it looks. It has a blank back on it. So just all my leftovers made a little extra structure for my back alley scene. And there you can see it in set into the module. So these two structures I got, I think they were like $2 each or something like that. They're 3 walls. There's the back, or the front wall, I should say, is missing. DPM structures. So they became the basis of, I made 3 structures out of these two by pulling them apart, cutting them down, and that was what 2 of the structures I got out of it. So you can see I've added some of that mortar mix, just highlighted in certain areas here and there, and I just added little pieces of wire for the meters and stuff like that. And a lot of times that's hiding something that's bad in the on the walls that it needs to be hidden, because Otherwise it'd stand out. But and I do that with signs too. Sometimes where a sign goes, it's where something has been gouged out, or there's a hole in there or something. But and the leftover pieces made another little building that's about an inch wide. And I these are letterings that you can get at the dollar stores. And I just put it on a piece of two pieces of strip wood and weathered it up. And there you have a sign for pointing to where one of the businesses are, so that you can see those three structures. So that was $2 worth of investment plus a bunch of little detail parts. I think I probably spent 10 times as much in detail parts than what I did on the structure, but it's the base to get going on stuff. That once again, that skater foam that I've set it on. Here's another little structure. I think that's an Atlas, one of their little office buildings. So that's the way it came. Kind of an ugly looking little thing, but everybody's seen those, and that's what I come up with it by just adding just giving it a prime coat to paint on the bottom. The roof, I didn't do anything. I just started building up pan pastels of that because it had. We'll go back. It had kind of a funny, texture already on it that kind of looked good underneath. So I left that as is. And then you had some signs and a bit of greenery. There was probably a crack there or something. That's why I went all the way up with the greenery on there, and makes a neat little model. So it's amazing what you can do with and these are good ones to start on if you're new to refurbishing buildings. But I always like playing that. If I got another one, I'd probably do it a little bit different, see what I can do with it. So a friend of mine gave me this. It was part built, and he had done a little bit to it. As you can see, it's not that great a shape, and the roofs are sagging, and the coloring's not that great. But somebody did not bad job on it. So, and there was lots of extra parts in the box. So I went by supporting it all, and I used some green paint, painted some of the windows and put them back in. I left the stain and everything as is for the time being on it. But, let's see. Okay, so there we're getting a little further along. I've made the door so it's partway open. I'm using some yellow chalk to color the walls on it, just to right over top of what somebody had originally done. But you can see I put a lot of bracing in it. There was a lot of, and I just used whatever I got laying around because you don't see any of that. But it just needed a lot more support. And that's how it looks finished. So I used styrene to redo the roof because the roofs were all sagging. I had to throw them all out. Tar paper roof once again. So this time, instead of spraying it gray, I sprayed it a green color, and then sanded it down. And we've got two pieces of the corrugated roofing again, used as awnings. That's a little piece of fencing that's from Tichy. And just by using that yellow on the walls, it kind of it changed the look of it. Add a bunch of signs, rust the signs up a bit. Tichy barrel, you can do a little bit of weathering on that. And the door open, you can see inside. I glued some stuff on the inside. That's an engine battery box that I turned into a little workbench inside the door. This is another little structure that I did. I built it. It's is it Bar Mills? Yeah, I think it's a Bar Mills structure. No, it's anyhow, it's not coming to me at the moment. But I built it originally like that, and it looked kind of ho hum. There was a bit of a flaw in the window there and that, but I decided I can do a lot better job than that. So I went back at it about 6 months later, and instead of the roofing that it came with, I did my tar paper roof, which added a lot to it. I boarded up the window because I didn't like that little bit of a flaw in there. And I just rusted up the signs and added a little bit more weathering to the wall. And it really made a difference. If you read the NMRA magazine. This was actually featured in it a few years back. And there's another close up. I had some pigeons to the roof and, some boards and stuff up top. And yeah, just by adding a few more things and just changing the roof. I really, when I do the roll top roof, I also do little cuts in it here and there to give it that worn look. And it really makes a difference. And there's it on the layout. Another little structure. This was also in my book. So if somebody glued pieces of roof, I think it was a kit bash of a couple of structures that somebody played around with. So that's what it looked like when I got it. Just by adding the tar paper roof, took the seams out of there, and just doing some painting and weathering to the walls. I didn't really do a lot. And then add a bunch of signs with the door open. You can add some interior to it. It really makes a difference. So I added a caboose chimney to it. I actually added a bit of patching to it, and you push in with a pen to make some nail spots on it, and also some blinds. Yeah, that's just brown paper bag that I've kind of cut out more as a tear so that they look worn. Another overall view of it, the CN sign on it. This is kind of a little bit overscale, but that was a thermometer that was included in one of the kits, but I added it on anyhow. And you can see like around the windows and doors, that's all done with a micro brush, just very lightly, just hit it with some white or gray, and it makes it look like it's worn paint on there, and really makes a difference instead of just, painting them a bright color of some sort. Here's two more little structures. That's the way they came. Somebody had scratch built these, but I got them at one of the shows. Well, that's what they look like when I got done. Once again, that I didn't add any roofing. I just left what was there and just kind of painted it, added a little bit of detail on top. The walls are all done just with a spray bomb to get the base coat of a green, and then the rest is pan pastels. Another thing you can do on your structures too, or you can add details around that bring it out. Like if you got old trailers that you're not using, this is by a sand house, and the other one is just right along the tracks where there's a loading area, and you just put all your little details all around. So that you made two little structures by using a couple vehicles and adding some details around. The other thing I kind of wish I had done, but I might do it at some time, is cut this door open, and you can have stuff on the inside. Maybe put a figure inside that's doing something inside. This building, I'm not sure. I think it's a Grant Line building. It's another one I picked up. It had all these signs on it. I really didn't do a lot to change it at all. I just kind of went along and painted it. So this is what it looked like when it was finished. So I just added like rust spots along the seams using what I mentioned earlier, the two rust colors, and then streaked it with Bragdon powders, and then just added pan pastels and powders down the side. The same along here. All the signs were actually on the building already, so I just added a bit of extra detail, and I kind of really liked how that one turned out. So, and there's an end view. You can do a lot with just a few rust spots here and there. This structure, I'm not even sure who made it, but that's how it looked when I got it. It was kind of a rough looking thing, but I didn't really paint anything on it. I just I guess I did by the looks of it. I did add some paint on it. These are all the products I would have used. I had them all laid out, but mostly what made it stand out are the pan pastels and that. So this cinnamon brown, that's my rust color from the dollar store. A lot of times I'll use it. So a lot of these little spots here, that's all done with Dollarama paint. And of course, there's my rust texture again that's been added on, but the rest is all powdered. So that's how it looks once it's all complete. And added a bunch of detail on the platform. So that's something that I got for a couple dollars and gave me something to play around with and see what I come up with. Add some signs. So I always like keeping all my signs. You can see there's it had broken little pieces of the window pane, but I just left it as is. It just adds to it. It's a worn out building. Again, some pigeons on the roof. And there's it set in my layout. So it's something that can go in and out as required. And that's it.
Well, George, that's a really amazing presentation. It's quite an amazing body of work, and thank you for taking the time to put all that together for us. I
Oh,
think
you're welcome.
anybody, I think anybody who's interested in this field will immediately have their detailing effort go up 100% after they see that. I'm back with Greg, and we have a few questions for you. Would you like to go first, Greg?
Sure, that'd be great. First off, I've got 2 pages full of notes here. And then as I was madly writing down notes, I realized I can watch this again. Anyway, thanks, George. That was absolutely fantastic.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I'm train shows, I look at these structures and I go, ah, it's just junk. That's just junk. And I never ever buy them. And now I'm like, well, this is what I need to buy rather than buying a brand new one. Um, when you do your the pan pastels or the powders or chalks, do you ever seal it with a clear coat afterwards?
No, no, you're actually better not to because it takes away a lot of the effect of it. So it's quite good at sticking to whatever you put it on. Like I find that if you get a mark on it, like if you put your finger and it leaves a mark on it, you can draw the powders down the side again just by putting a brush on it. So you never have to worry about that.
Okay. So you're not sealing. Now, when you do a wash, I've read that it's helpful to have a gloss coat for a wash so that it flows down. Have you ever tried
No,
that? Found
I've
that?
never used a gloss coat. Usually, everything I do, if I'm not painting it, and like all those models that I do, if it's not primered with one of the primers that I showed at the start, I put a flat finish on. I like using Tamiya, their flat clear. That's maybe
Okay.
the best flat finish you can get. But like if I take a model before I start adding any of the powders, if I'm not adding any primer to it, I just give it a seal of that. So it gives everything a bit of grit to stick to.
Okay.
And you never have to worry. No, I have on rolling stock. I had a piece of rolling stock. It was a milk car, and it was painted CN green, and it should have been more like a Pullman green. So I tried to change it by using the pan pastel. So I sealed it with um, the flat clear, put the powders on, but it didn't really take it to the color I wanted. I left all the lettering. I tried to stay away from the lettering, but I did go over it with another coat of flat clear, which took some of it away. And then I put another layer of the pan pastel. And so it actually gave it a little bit of depth to it. So if you're
Okay.
thinking of putting more on, you can spray it and then put another coat on. So it kind of gives it a little bit more depth to it. But
Okay.
as far as sealing it, it takes too much of what you've done away from it.
Okay. Interesting. The last question I have is the newspapers. I thought that was a great touch. What is your technique for your newspapers?
The newspapers you actually get in some of your kits. So if you buy a Bar Mills kit, Foss scale, actually the Ice House just came to mind. The Ice House was a Foss scale kit. They give you all that stuff in the
Oh,
kits.
okay.
So the more kits you buy, like you get that stuff. And I actually photocopy them all. And usually when we're at shows, I hand them out to guys that are interested in what I'm doing. So so they have something to work with.
Right.
Um, but I've been to shows that are strictly for structure building, and you got a lot of the manufacturers, and they have giveaways like that a lot of times. You'll want by, and they'll have a bunch of little signs that are all done up on a sheet, and newspapers on there. So you start with, you know, you keep those and you photocopy them, and you always have some.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I know I'm going to be ordering your book. That's just because I want more ideas. It's just fantastic. Thank you. James, I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, thanks, Greg. One of the questions Greg had about the clear coating, you've already answered, George. Another question I had was on some of your tar paper roofs, you've basically highlighted the tarred seam, and I'm just wondering what you used for that, please.
Yeah, the edges on it is done mostly with it's a Bragdon powder, and it's a dark rust. So
I
I
was thinking of the black, you had one photo with the black tar edge.
Oh, okay. Um, was it one that I done with the construction paper, or was it in one of the earlier ones?
Not sure. One of the earlier ones, I think.
Okay, well, at that time when I do the seams, that would just been gloss coat on a very, very fine brush,
Okay.
and I run that along the seams. You don't want to make it too thick, but sometimes it's hard to not get it too thick. And I usually go over it like, you don't want it too glossy. So once I put it on and it dries, I sometimes just pull some of the powders down over top, so it gives it that gloss but not gloss. So like it had been there for a while.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it just gives it that tarry look that
Now, at various times you spoke about using Bragdon and pan pastels. I have some experience with pan pastels, and they do indeed adhere very well. I am less experienced with Bragdon, and I was just wondering how you feel the two compare. If someone was new and they were, for instance, starting out buying products.
um I find that they both work about the same. They both do the same job. um Maybe more cost effective is the Bragdon powders, because you get a soot color and three rusts in one package, and you get that little plastic can, and it's like maybe $15 or something like that to buy it. Whereas each pod of your pan pastels in Canada, it's getting close to $10.
Yeah.
So, to get four, that's $40. So, cost wise, you might do better getting your rust colors through Bragdon powders. And for your other colors, maybe go with pan pastels. Really, there's most of my, even though I have a whole bunch of pan pastels, I really only use the raw umber shade, the neutral gray, and the like the boxcar red color. So you really can get away with just those three. They were all mentioned on the sheet by name at the beginning when I was showing it.
The one thing I can say is the pan pastels in the quantities we need last a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Although my raw umber shade, I'm into my second one already, and I've only been using it maybe 6 years, 5, 6 years.
We saw about 50 models in your presentation.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've done quite a bit. Yeah.
In cases where you're getting these train show hand-me-downs, if you will, I'm sure you've encountered, maybe you don't buy them, but I'm sure you've encountered the odd one that looks like it's been painted with house paint. And that brings me to a question about stripper. If you ever have occasion to use stripper, what's your preference?
I haven't stripped anything. I don't strip
Ah,
anything.
okay.
Although, like, if it's got too heavy paint, and if it's glued too, like if you have glue oozing out all over the place, I usually bypass those models. Or
Yeah,
there's too many, because there's so many models. Like you can go to a show, and you're looking for a station. You're bound to find one that's built half decently, and that's your best option, instead of trying to have something that's got tons of paint on it, lots of glue, and
you can't make a silk
no.
purse out of a sow's ear.
No. Well, what you can do with some of those is just like I did with that ice house. That ice house was a mess as far as glue and breakage on it. Is you cut it down so that it worked out good for getting pieces out of the model to build something else, a smaller version of it.
certainly have an incredible creativity, and I think, you know, this presentation will be, I think, a great inspiration for anybody who watches it because you've covered so much. And at this point, I think we'll wrap up, and I'd like to thank you again, George, for taking the time to contribute to the ECD and NMRAX presentation series. And we're very grateful for you sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
No, thank you.
Thanks so much, George.
You're welcome.